Welcome to episode 9 of the Rest Days Community Podcast. This week we hear from Vedangi Kulkarni. She has cycled around the world, not once, but twice, with the first time being at age 19. She's balanced this alongside Arctic adventures, writing work, creating events, riding her bike for fun, and enjoying her 20s. We delve into what it means to be an athlete, how our perceptions of ourselves can be so different to how others see us. We talk about where her love for adventure and drive for all of this comes from. We have a candid conversation about where the line lies between pushing ourselves and risking our health. There is no right or wrong to many of the things we discuss, and I hope this podcast sparks interesting conversation or new ways of seeing things, but it is not here to tell anybody how they should be living their lives, because we are all just working that out as we go. Through inspirational and aspirational stories, Vedangi makes following your dreams seem simple. Her beautiful outlook on life will warm you. I hope you enjoy her story. Hello, V, or Vedangi, or as I've just learned now, Vidu. Welcome to the Rest Days podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am so glad to have you here. It's been a long time coming.
I'm just glad to be here.
Yeah.
And having a nice cup of tea.
Great. I will warn all the listeners, we do have a 13-week-old puppy in the recording with us. So you may hear some puppy-related sounds occasionally. But, you know, we've got to do what we've got to do to be able to get this done. Okay, V. So I want to go all the way back to the beginning. I'm going to go through your life, how you ended up with the crazy balance you have between work and play, and where all of that came from. So tell me all the way back at the beginning, what were you like as a kid? Were you a really driven kid? Were you a sporty kid? What were you like?
I think as a kid, I was the random kid that just does stuff. So, for example, in my school, I remember every few years there used to be this event where people did random things like walking on stilts, for example, or someone riding a bike and you're the person sitting on their shoulders, or standing behind the bike and doing stunts. And I remember very clearly I was 10 years old and I volunteered to be a part of this even when my age group wasn't meant to be involved in it. So I used to be that kid that just did things. And it was and there was another one where you went to the top of the building, and I'd never rappelled before or anything, and that was my first time learning how to do it. And then also doing valley crossing and things, but without ropes, but you know, across school building, that sort of thing. It was one of those things where I didn't need to be a part of a big group. I didn't need to feel that level of belonging at all. I just needed to go and do something. And that's what I was as a kid. But then I started playing football because it became the thing. It became the sport where I enjoyed the whole idea of goalkeeping, and I really enjoyed diving for the ball, or the idea of defense was really fun for me, and the focus it took, I really enjoyed it. And I always think that the reason I got into football, I got into goalkeeping particularly, was because I wasn't scared of getting hurt, which is something I have to remind myself now when
that's definitely
as a
feature of you now. I'm sometimes terrified for you because you're so brave.
Well, you say that, but I have to remind this to myself when I'm trying a new feature on my mountain bike, that there was once a time where you were a goalkeeper purely because you weren't scared of getting hurt and you thought that was a bit edgy or whatever. Anyway, the whole lack of belongingness was what brought me into the world of sport. Hated running or anything running related, another reason I was a goalkeeper, but it was probably like, you know, when you don't think you're good at something and then you just fall into that sport, you just fall into that and you think that will bring you that belongingness or sense of self, and whether or not it doesn't matter, you just get into it. So that's how I got into football. And there was a team called Pune FC, and they just like, it used to be a big team for men's team, and then they started a women's team, and then I became a part of it. But I was in like my 11th and 12th grade, so like 16, 17 years old, and the college I went to didn't have a football team, so I got the girls together, made a team, and made them do the district leagues and things like that. We lost probably every single match, but it was so fun because all these people who had never even thought of football before, and then they were interested and they were playing, and you know, I got friends involved. When I then went on to play for a bigger team and stuff. It didn't matter if I was good or not. Suddenly it was like, whatever it is, I'll just fit right in. I'll just figure it out. And even if I'm bad, who cares? I'll figure it out. And so that became my relationship with football and sport in general, that it doesn't matter if I'm bad at it as long as I'm doing it. And effort became that metric of success in a way. If I was given effort, if I was having the worst period of my life and I was still there at a match that I was kind of feeling miserable, but I showed up, then I was proud of myself. And suddenly what other people thought it didn't matter.
So much to unpack there. Okay, I love that. There's so many great things there. Okay, so the first one, I mean, a big theme of this podcast has been that people want community and belonging, but I think what you're saying is that you had the belonging just from doing the thing. It didn't have to be a team sport, or you didn't have to be, for example, you were the goalie, and maybe that's it's still part of the team, but it's not as, on the pitch running around with the people.
Yeah, that was a thing. I think what didn't work for me as a goalkeeper was the fact that I didn't have the confidence to be commanding. I tried. I could pretend to be that person, but I honestly believe that when you pretend, it shows.
Yeah.
When you are it's different. That was one of the things that I noticed with being a goalkeeper. But yeah, definitely more into actually doing things than, like, I don't think I've ever done anything with a proper linear step-by-step way. It's always been jump into the deep end, just do it, and you'll learn along the way. You'll probably find the belonging along the way. If not, you'll just be happy that you did it because you actually did something without waiting for someone else to say yes to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I love that mindset. I think it's super inspiring, and definitely for people who might be not sure about taking a step and getting into something, it's great. But what do you think made you brave enough to be like that? Why do you think? Was it just doing something once, trying something once, and then being like, oh, you can just do? Or was it that you think this was an inbuilt thing in you?
I don't know if it was inbuilt, but I do remember this one time I went for a camp. I think I was 14, 15 or something. I went for this outdoorsy camp in northern India and did some whitewater rafting and things like that. And at the time I didn't know that a part of this whole thing was bungee jumping. And I hadn't quite told my parents that I would go and do it. But then I got the money from one way or another to make sure that I had the money to pay to be able to do it. And I remember I came back from it and I just showed my parents the video of me bungee jumping. And I also remember being there, and I didn't want to see anyone else do it because then I would figure out whether it was good or not, whether it was scary or not. And then I was like, if I find out it's scary, then what if I don't want to do it anymore? And I think I found out when I did that bungee jump, and I was like, I'm really scared. I found a way to deal with it by knowing that no one else was doing it before me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was really scared, and I found myself to be on that edge and still jump off that edge and be okay with it. Then the reaction I had from my parents when they saw that video, I was like, and my dad still quotes it, he was like, you're the girl that just went and bungee jumped without knowing what it was, and like you didn't know if the rope was fine, you didn't know what it was, and you just went and did it, so you can probably do anything. And even now when I'm fussing over something a lot, he tells me that. So I think that's where that kind of comes from. I maybe got that little bit of validation by being a little bit brave about something, and now I'm like, maybe I can do anything,
Yeah. That makes sense. You've talked to me a little bit about your dad as well, and that he's a really supporting influence for this stuff. I mean, the fact that when you went back and showed him that you'd been bungee jumping, he was like, wow, that's really cool, you're really brave. And wasn't like, what the hell have you done?
No, he just found it quite funny that something that he created could do something like that. And he was like, so what is this bungee jumping? Like, how does it work? Like, what is this rope? And yeah, it was great.
So, were your parents sporty? Did they do anything like that?
God, absolutely not. My parents are as far away from sporty as one can go. My dad did trekking in his time. My mum did like NCC. National Cadet Corps, I think it's called. And it's like not an army wing, but kind of, it can lead up to being that at some point. So my mom did that, and both of them have found it extremely hard in their lives to be sporty in any way. And that wasn't like, every aptitude test I've ever done has said that the last thing I should be is an athlete. And
yet here we are.
Well, here we are, but again, I wouldn't say I'm an athlete. I just like to try things, and I just like to... Effort is the thing. I like putting in the effort. That's me.
But I guess it depends on what your definition of athlete is, because is an athlete... I guess some people maybe would say it's being the best at something, but I would say maybe being an athlete is just the doing of the activity and dedicating the time and having the passion for it. Yeah, that is a good way of seeing an athlete. My definition of athlete is someone who wants to do a certain sport well enough to want to put in the hard work that goes with it, the sacrifices that go with it. Yeah.
And I think when I was training for the Round the World, the more recent one, I think that's when I was an athlete, I would say, because I did... there were sacrifices, there was a lot of effort, and I cherish that effort. It made me feel so good about myself every time I put in that effort. So I think I was an athlete when I did that, but I never see that as a continuation. I always see that as a momentary thing. In that moment, I was an athlete, in that moment. For example, I used Wahoo system, so the Sufferfest workout as a part of it.
Okay.
And I remember there's this workout called Kitchen Sink in there. It's a 3-hour workout, including a little bit of everything. It has the neuromuscular side, it has the threshold stuff, and it has like basically every single zone that you can hit, you do hit in that workout. There's very little recovery, and for 3 hours, it's very full on. And I remember there are parts of that workout where I would be like, I think this is what death feels like. and when I first tried it, I couldn't go through the whole 3 hours. And I remember every time I got to the end of that workout, I was insanely proud of myself. And I think in that moment, I would feel like an athlete. And it's always been that momentary thing. When I push really hard on our local mountain bike climb on a normal bike, I'm like, quite athletic today, I don't have to kind of be at a race performing really well for that, but
it can be just you and yourself and your relationship with your body.
So then that's why right now when I'm feeling a bit meh in terms of sports, I do feel a little bit burnt out and a little bit lacking that sense of self and that sense of belonging. So right now the last thing I'm feeling like is an athlete. And it's quite interesting how that works. But
yeah, so interesting. What do you think? So obviously when you push yourself and you achieve and then you feel amazing, what has that taught you about yourself, and what did that mean for the rest of your life?
I think the sense of achievement has taught me how much I like to put in the effort.
Yeah.
And that's taught me that when I'm in the thick of things and feeling like I have been maybe this month, that lack of sense of self and lack of whatever, that's teaching me that there's a way out. This is probably the hard bit of the workout, and I'll feel better. It will get better, and it's not the end of the world. I think everything that I've ever done, the one thing it's taught me is that nothing is the end of the world. Because I don't know if this is a cultural thing or a me thing or a family thing, but where I come from, everything is catastrophized to such an extent. If you get a little bit hurt, it's blown up quite a bit, and everything is really extreme. What everything has taught me, those moments of a sense of achievement or whatever, is that it's not like, it's good right now, maybe that won't last, but also if it's bad right now, that's not going to last, and that you can have that, the balance will come.
I guess a lot of endurance athletes talk about that concept within the activities they do. They have to tell themselves that, but it is really good metaphor for life, because that is exactly in life, you know, there's phases and all the bad ones will end and all the good ones will end. But as long as you keep plodding, it'll be okay.
Yeah. I think even with the emotional ups and downs, if there is at least a part of you that knows that this is not the end of the world, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, for sure. You're a very old go person. When did you first start to become aware of rest? I guess first probably when you were playing football at high level, maybe you became aware of rest as a part of training, like a core part of training. But then there's also the rest sometimes that you need in the bigger picture of just looking after yourself. What do you remember becoming aware of that in your life?
Yeah, I think I'm getting better at it as I'm getting older, because there was definitely like, even in the first round of the world, I was so young. I didn't think of it in quite this way back then, but I remember every time I wasn't riding my bike or something hurt or I didn't feel okay, I was almost like, no, you can't think that, because then we're never going to achieve this goal. If you even rest a little bit, then that looks bad on you. It was almost that thing, you know, if you rest more, it looks bad on you. If you look after yourself more. And it was like, at the time I saw endurance cycling as a sport where you had to be that person who hated rest. If you just love to keep going, and if you hated rest, then you're a good endurance athlete. That's so unhealthy. That was so unhealthy. And I can't believe I went through my entire early 20s thinking that way.
But doesn't that say a lot about the image of the sport, that's what, because I think I agree. I've thought that about the sport of endurance cycling, that people are presenting or glamorizing this idea of if you rest you're weak or you have to keep going, because no successful athlete out there isn't resting.
I know, and I find this quite interesting because I follow Kate Courtney on Instagram, and she's quite good at portraying how much she eats, how much she rests, how much she works out, and you know, the strength training, the casual rides, the rides where she doesn't use a Garmin or whatever, and times when she's actually using all the recovery equipment that that elite athletes use. And I think those examples are so necessary. I don't know if this is like a very ultra cycling issue, the whole rest equals bad thing, because obviously with races and stuff, you know, you're not sleeping as much, and that's almost kind of like, oh my god, she did that thing and she only slept 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to use the word glamorize, because that's the opposite of glamour, but it's almost seen as something to aspire to be. Like, sleep as little as possible. That's the only way to be. And I don't know, I'm getting around to thinking a bit like, actually, your happiness index is so much higher when the rest you are having is effective rest. So I noticed this. Something I tried with my second round of the world. On the really good days I noticed that I had maybe even 6 hours of sleep, but it was so good that my phone was in airplane mode, for example. I always find mental rest so much more than physical rest, because physical rest I can find in like anything, but the mental rest I find really hard, because my mind is super active. I do have ADHD, but that's got nothing to do with this maybe, but I find my mind to be so active with a lot of negative things that I'm working to make positive, if that makes sense, and that keeps it so active all the time. I never find that being restful in any way. And so when I found ways to make that, to quieten that part of me, I can actually talk myself into not caring what other people think. I can I can be that person who's my own safe space. And when I find myself in that zone is when I can actually switch off, when I can actually do that thing where I just put my phone / my life on airplane mode. I think that's restful. That's good rest.
Yeah, that's actually such an interesting way to put it, because I think we are always thinking about something else, and
or someone else.
Yeah, or someone else. I think that's the thing, yeah. And it's really easy in your head to say, oh, if I'm just thinking about myself, is that being selfish? But actually, it's not. You really have to sometimes take a second to check in with yourself And that's not selfish, because if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anybody else.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. When I'm feeling really messed up in my head, when I'm in the low lows, and even if I go on a solo ride listening to cringy music and allow myself to just talk to myself and only think about myself, it's an active thing of resting. It's like my active recovery, but it's only recovery because I'm thinking of myself. Otherwise, it's a bike ride.
I was thinking as well about something else you said there about the sort of extreme endurance sports. And as a doctor, I think about this quite a lot. I feel really conflicted. As a doctor and a person interested in doing endurance sports, I feel conflicted, because part of me is like, because people do things where they don't sleep for many days and they just cycle, it makes you kind of feel like you should be able to do that. If you don't do that, have you tested yourself as much as you can? But then I also find it really interesting, and there isn't data to support this, but I hope that, and I don't know if there ever would be, because it's so niche, I don't know if you could ever gather it, but I'd be really interested to find out what the long-term health outcomes are for people who do sports like that. I mean, I'm confident that they are not good, and that you are probably putting yourself at risk of quite a lot of stuff. Definitely that level of sleep deprivation and exhaustion, just based on the data we have about sleep, probably predisposes you to things like dementia and takes time off your life. And we do know that really good athletes, especially of a certain generation, sort of in the 80s and 90s, 70s, are now having problems with their hearts. And there's specific types of training that we know we're more at risk for that. And so I find it interesting, because we obviously really judge and go, well, you shouldn't smoke and don't drink, because those things are really bad for you. And athletes look down on people who smoke and drink, because those are the things that we're like, oh, what unhealthy lifestyle choices. But actually, we're glamorizing being an ultra athlete, but is that also just an unhealthy lifestyle choice?
Yeah, but isn't it like, if it's less than 2 weeks, the event that requires you to not sleep enough, how is that going to cause super long-term thing? Yes, in the next couple months, maybe your sleep cycle and are a bit messed up, but how can a couple weeks of not sleeping well affect you for the next 20 years maybe?
I think the problem is most ultra athletes aren't doing that just like once in a year. They're doing it quite a few times. Yeah. And the training also involves you to really push yourself. Especially
if you have a full-time job and you're training.
Yeah, if you have a full-time job and you're training, you're definitely not sleeping enough. I think that's just like a straight up, there's not enough time in the day. So you probably are causing yourself long-term effects there. It is very interesting, just because we think of these people as heroes and incredible, and we say that what they're doing is really great and they're super healthy, but I'm not sure that it is. And that's maybe, I think, for most people, if we changed that and we accepted that isn't actually really good for us, maybe we'd all feel better about ourselves and the level that we're doing. And that should be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, that, you know what? Living a good life with being good at your sport and also living a good life at the same time should definitely be celebrated.
Yeah. But I'm also not saying that it's a bad choice to not do that. I'm just saying that maybe it's not like we shouldn't put it on a pedestal.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've done that for a very, very long time, and it's become a bit of a thing in my head sometimes. But it's weird. Everyone keeps saying that as you get a bit older and older, those kind of hectic extreme thoughts kind of calm down. And I used to always almost look down upon that, and now I'm getting older. I'm 27 now, and now I'm getting a bit like that. I value every single day when I do yoga. I'm like, I'm only doing yoga, this is what I'm doing. When I meditate, I'm like, this is what I'm doing right now, and this is all I should be doing right now. The world isn't gonna end for like the 10 minutes that I'm quiet,
But did you used to think it would?
Yeah. I used to be like, no, if I'm taking 10 minutes and if I'm not replying to that thing right now, if I'm not doing this thing that I think I should be doing in that particular moment right away, then I'm unprofessional in some way. I won't go as far as saying I'm a bad person, but I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So I definitely thought that a lot, and then that's calmed down. And it's really nice, because now that sense of urgency with certain things is gone, and I'm still finding the balance with where the sense of urgency should be there, but yeah, for the larger part, it's quite nice to have that a bit calmed.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that as well. Where do you think it came from for you?
It came from actually having solid proof that the world doesn't end when you don't right away do things.
Yeah.
And actually, that part of me didn't come from sport in general, but out of the social desperation that I say I have sometimes, where I love being by myself, but there's this part of me which has sought for validation from certain sources a lot, especially if they are professionally placed higher than me or age-wise elder than me, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so it came from that part of me which found out that A, you don't have to please anyone, and B, if someone needs something, that something doesn't need to happen right away. And so there was this time that someone I really valued messaged me, and I was like, what if I just wait before I message back? Just wait, see what happens. Nothing bad's gonna happen. They're not gonna unsend the message. That's not what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it was funny because that was the proof, you know. They didn't unsend the message. I replied, and I was maybe a bit calmer and more regulated when I did. And maybe that was like, you know, a nice proof that bad things don't happen when you don't do things right away.
That's also a really interesting one as well, about the sometimes what you do in response to the thing that you feel pressured to do. So in this case, to send a reply actually ends up being a better reply or more well thought out. That's another thing that comes with age, isn't it? You realise that if you do spend a little extra second on something or leave something a little bit longer, maybe actually something better comes up from it even. Yeah,
it's kind of a similar concept to, for example, being sleep deprived and riding at a few kilometers per hour slower, but for longer, than getting a longer sleep and doing the same few hours extra but faster, if that makes sense. I can kind of relate to that in that sense.
Yeah, I think that one's a great example in sport, because that applies across all sport, doesn't it? Like, do I do this extra training session this week, but then I'm so knackered next week that I can't complete the training I was supposed to do? And same with that. Do you stop and have sleep and then perform better tomorrow? Or, I mean, that must have come up so many times in around the world. How did you decide where the end of the day was?
I decided it on the go, actually. I mean, before leaving, I'd planned where the end of every single day would be. But I'd also accepted that it was never going to be a solid thing. It would be a guideline. It would be more so that I know where I'm going rather than how I'm going to do things.
Yeah.
And I think that worked really well, because especially the second time, because it helped me let go where I had to let go, and it helped me push more where I felt I could. And it helped me find that extra bit on the days where I needed it, you know. And that was quite good. But around the world, especially in Australia, I had many days where I was a bit like, this pouring rain, nothing's dry, but I think I can get to the coast today, so I think I should get to the coast today. I think I have that little bit of extra. But then if I get a longer sleep overnight, then tomorrow I can go a little bit faster and reset. Then I found a way to reset, and I would do that based on how many days I had to get to somewhere, if that made sense. I always knew once I get to a big desert area, I'm absolutely not in control.
Yeah.
You know, the wind is in control. And then I was going with my heart rate zones quite a bit, because that was a really kind of ideal way for me to deal with things.
Yeah.
And I was always like, once I get in the desert bit, if it's headwind the whole way, then, and if I'm promising myself that I'll stick to a certain heart rate zone, then whatever else happens, the distance that gets done gets done. If I have to stay an hour or two longer, I have to then think about, is it worth it? On the go, I'll be looking at the wind charts and things, which I loved, because I was like, this is so cool that I'm in the middle of nowhere and I've got just enough internet to look at wind charts to figure out how the direction of wind is changing. And also in India, I needed to think about these things because it was at the start of summer, And I struggle with heat a lot. Every single time I've ridden in India, no matter which year I did it in, I got heat exhaustion and I couldn't keep food down. So every time that was a problem, I had to be like, hey, I could just ride through the night. And then there were days when I got more done overnight than I did during the daytime.
Yeah.
And then my friend, who is kind of my mentor, he got me into everything endurance or anything long distance for that matter. And he was like, we plan this right, then we're actually training you to deal with this heat better. So you're still having this problem, yes, but we are teaching your body to deal with this better. And have you thought of this as more than just get this right over and done with?
Yeah.
And, think about, oh, actually I can have a good sleep in the night rather than mess up my sleep cycle.
Yeah.
And have the right electrolytes or the right amount of electrolytes, have a cooling vest thing, have more coconut water, have a couple more stops than normal, but you're learning to deal with the thing that you hate, the thing that you find so hard a little bit better for future. And I thought that was quite cool because I did sleep better, and towards the end my Whoop had green recoveries back to back and 20 plus strain back to back, and I was kind of fine.
That's so good. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you overcame that, because in my head there's no barrier for you. Every single time I've ever seen you come up against something, you find a way around it. Do you ever doubt yourself?
I doubt myself in social situations. I doubt myself in mountain biking. I do doubt myself in certain... every time comparison is possible, and I know my brain will go there, I do doubt myself. I find it extremely hard to pull myself out of it as well. But I really do have to work hard in my head to figure out just what's important and what matters in any particular situation.
Yeah.
To then be a bit more normal about it.
So you definitely experienced that comparison is the thief of joy thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's my worst enemy.
Yeah.
I don't see actual barriers with anything. I'll do things that I hate, but my brain will not be a nice place to be. Yeah. And that's the problem. I'm not the kind of person who's like, I don't like doing this, so I won't. I'm like that with food. If I don't like something, I just won't have it. But I'm not like that with experiences or things. But my brain won't be a nice place to be. And that's what but then I also see that experience as, how can I teach myself to be better safe space for myself?
Yeah.
How can my mind be a safe space so that the comparison thing isn't getting as hectic? And I also think this is very much a cultural thing. Where I grew up, comparison was very much a thing. You always compare to someone else's child, cousins, whatever. That comes up more often than you'd think. And you're always worse off than someone, and it's made clear to you. And then that, now I realize as a grown-up, has not gone very well for me.
Yeah.
So I it's not like, I don't want to self-validate too much and be like, look, everything you've done, you're so good. I don't care about that. I just want to feel safe within myself. And for me, that's another reason why I'll still do things that I don't like, because everything is kind of teaching me that, to feel safe within myself. Yeah,
so if you're the only person on the playing field, generally, I think, I think nothing can stop you.
Yeah. And that's such a thing, because the first time I did Round the World, the way I came up with the fact that I was going to do this Round the World ride was when I was preparing for Edinburgh, London, and I planned myself this 400 kilometer route. I used to live down in Bournemouth, and I planned this route from Bournemouth to London and back. And cutting a very long story short, when my bike broke down and I knocked on someone's door, stayed with them, and they asked me where I was going, I said John O'Groats, which wasn't part of the plan. I didn't have any equipment. I didn't have a lot of money to get to John O'Groats. But then I had committed, right? I had said to someone, I'm going to John O'Groats.
I love
so
this
then
story.
I was like, I gotta go there now. But I knocked on people's doors. I stayed with them. I slept in the bus shelters. And that was a big part, because the whole bus shelters thing, it exposed me to the real UK in such a weird way. that I was feeling lonely, but I was also feeling like no one knows what I'm doing, where I am, like nothing can stop me now. And the lonely bits were where I was reading Juliana Buring's book, This Road I Ride, first woman to circumnavigate the globe on a bicycle. And everything about her personality really kind of drew me in, and that book really inspired me. And I was like, if I really get to John O'Groats, I'm doing this too. And then there was something about it that pushed me to John O'Groats. I wrote on A9, which now I think about it, I'm like, wow, what the hell?
I know, I would never write along that.
I know, right?
I can't believe you did that.
And now I look at all the Roadwatch, A82 Roadwatch, A9 Roadwatch, that sort of groups in there's like, oh, this idiot cyclist, and I'm like, oh my god. If I look through posts from 2017, I was the idiot cyclist that someone may have posted about. But that ride, when I got to John O'Groats and I told my dad I was going to ride my bike around the world and I wanted to break the record, it didn't even cross my mind that anything would be wrong if I didn't achieve that.
Yeah.
It didn't cross my mind that I wouldn't achieve that. All that crossed my mind was that, how is this going to happen? I'm riding my bike around the world. Okay, what does that mean? I know what it means by reading her book. Physically, I know what it takes, but someone else has a British passport, I have an Indian. So what does that mean? Oh, visas. Oh, I remember when I was a kid, we applied for a Schengen visa to go to Europe. So that's one of the visas I'll need. And then in my head, those things kind of came together, but it just didn't occur to me that anything would be wrong at any point if I failed. It was actually like, I'm trying something really huge and everyone would know that. And it also didn't occur to me that I was too young to do it or anything, because I had once known someone who was 19 years old. I still know him actually, a 19-year-old British guy who had ridden his bike around the world. And I remember when he was passing through India, emailing him. And, I said to him, when I'm 19, I'm going to do something like this. But I wasn't a cyclist back then.
Yeah.
So I never thought I would actually
cycle around the world.
Yeah. So I never saw that as a barrier as such. But the comparison and competition thing is a funny one, because it never occurred to me, even when I found out someone else was going to be attempting the same record, same time of the year, it hadn't occurred to me at all. For me, it was more like, I'm not getting the Russian visa. Oh no, I'm getting the Russian visa, but it's not for enough days. Or if I apply for this visa now, there's a certain time period within which you have to apply. But you can't apply too further in advance and things like that. There's so much into it. And I was kind of thinking about those things. So in my head, I wasn't comparing. And having played football, having lost enough matches, having conceded enough goals, having failed in a way so many times, and also when I did play football, I was never the strongest anywhere in any sport ever. And so I always knew that failure is a chance, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It became a thing that if I'm cycling, I'm just me. If I'm doing something long distance, it's on my decisions and my goals and what happens when no one's watching. And that really kind of stopped that comparison in tracks because I knew, So I don't know, that helped me.
I think it makes such a big difference if you're doing it for yourself primarily, doesn't it? I have to say, when I think about 19-year-old V going off to do this, one part of me is just so in awe. I just can't ever imagine believing I could do something like that at 19. And that is this quality of you that is so unique, and it's the reason you're so successful. It's just so amazing that you would go and do that. And the other part of me is like, oh my goodness, how did you survive?
But it didn't take any self-belief to make that decision to do that. Like, the context here is that I did move to a whole new country, whole new culture, only 5 days after I turned 18.
Most people who do that don't cycle around the world.
Yeah, but for me it was more like, I didn't make any friends from the culture I come from. I had no Indian friends. I tried to make everything from scratch when it came to like the social connections. And I didn't have a community, and I felt really lonely. But I had just come off of the back of a bike expedition, having ridden across the Indian Himalayas only a few months when I was in the summer, I guess.
Before you went to university?
Before I went to university. And And because I'd done that on the bike, there was a part of me which was like, oh, I can do things on a bike. So even if there's no one else with me, I can just look at this place with a funny name on the map and I can go and see what's there. And that became a thing. And suddenly, because I didn't even think that I rode on motorways by accident, like, and then found out when I got escorted away by the police. And I wasn't like, there was no concept of, oh, I could get in trouble when I was here, because I was a bit like, I will still be in way less trouble as I would be if I did the same thing in India. Because here everything felt like there was a room for conversation. There was a room for...
That is so interesting. Wow, I'm so interested by that. This just shows like how our different experiences of the world are, I think. Because I would be terrified to do that in the UK, because in the UK, like, the laws are the law, things are so strict. In India, like, road laws, and I got away with all of them by accident. But we drove to places where we weren't supposed to legally and stuff, and like by accident. And then when somebody asked, we were just like, "I'm really sorry," and they were like, "It's okay, stupid white person," and I was like, "Yay, thank you."
Yeah. Also, it's quite interesting. Until I came here, now I understand that people can have racist experiences and things like that, and I've had them too, but there was no part of me which thought that because I was from a different country or a different skin color, I would have a different experience. That was never part of my vocabulary. That was never a part of anything I thought of at all. Even now.
I'm so glad of that, but I'm sorry that our country didn't live up to that.
But it's weird, because even now when I tell my parents about certain things, for example, and they're like, oh no, that was a discrimination because of your skin color, sort of, and I'm like, no one thinks like that. I kind of do that thing because I just refuse to believe that will ever be the only reason. And I'm always like, no, I'm more than that. So I expect people to see me as more than that. And I've put that as such a strong thing in front of me that I do look past it, and I won't take no for an answer if I think that it's purely because of my skin color or something stupid like that. I'm not having this,
It's so good.
But it's a bit forced sometimes, but that's the thing. But my original point was that self-belief or confidence to do that thing at 19 wasn't what I was thinking about. For me, it was more that I didn't even realize that I was too young to do what I was doing, or too inexperienced to do what I was doing. I didn't see it as jumping into the deep end when I now know I was jumping into the deep end. To me, it was an adventure. It was a new thing that I was trying. It was something I get to learn from scratch. Something that I get to talk to new people and ask questions. And so the first thing I remember when I told my dad about it, he sent me a bunch of links about people who have gone around the world solo. And then when he did that, he also was like, you should get in touch with these people. And I remember telling him, I was like, I don't think they're ever going to reply. And then, in a weird way, I did get in touch, and every single person replied with a positive thing.
Wow.
Every single person that asked for help helped me. Maybe they didn't give me like direct support.
Yeah.
But any technical question I asked, I was helped with in a much detailed way. And I don't know, in a way, yes, I had people tell me that I was too young to be doing anything, but because I didn't feel it, and because there was almost this part of me which was like, oh, what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
Not in a way
that's fair.
Like, it didn't occur to me that I could be in danger at some point. That just didn't occur to me. Like, when the thing happened in Spain, being held at knife point or beaten up and being mugged and that stuff.
It's just awful. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
It hadn't occurred to me that could happen. It did occur to me when Callum and I were like sitting down in a cafe and writing a risk assessment. Then it occurred to me that, oh wow, like really bad things can happen. Because he was so much more aware that about the bad things that can happen. And I was a bit like, yeah, bad things can happen, but
yes,
yeah, but I'll be fine.
But if you had known those things, maybe you wouldn't have done it. And that's, it's so
I knew those things second time, and I was still young enough.
Yeah. But I guess the second time maybe you thought about more how to mitigate it. Plus, the second time you'd already done it once, so you were probably
I don't know. It's so much harder to do anything the second time.
Yeah, tell me about the mentality of that then.
It was so hard not to do it just to prove something. It was it was also
what would you have been trying to prove?
That I'm stronger,
Yeah.
that I can do it better, that I can have more data to prove what I've done, because by then I had learned that matters in this part of the world.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that anyone can ever doubt or question what I've done. Like, I didn't know that until it happened.
Yeah.
And it's actually good that I didn't know it until it happened, because now I know for sure. Now I also know whether or not I want to care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I learned to have that choice, or give myself that choice more with the second time. Also, the thing that crossed my mind was that I know exactly what this takes. I know how hard it is to ride your bike when you don't want to ride your bike at times. And, you know, when that's genuinely the last thing you want to do. I knew what it took to still get up in the morning and do it.
And then you still went and did it. It's so impressive.
That was hard though, because knowing what it takes and then going out and wanting to do it suddenly makes you wonder whether you do or do not want to do it.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of this whole thing. And also, the competition was the other thing. I was like, do I care about the competition? And then I remember on one of my best days where I felt great about myself, I found out that there will be a bigger competition going into the next round the world. So I just finished Mega, and I was like, you know, with people I went to uni with.
Mega Avalanche.
Sorry, yes, yeah. And you know, I was just like having so many shots of Sambuca and having a great time in the French Alps with pals. And a mate was like, oh, have you seen this? And I was like, oh, I don't stand a chance. This is never happening for me. I'm never going to get the record. I started spiraling right there. And then it was funny because then more alcohol was pushed towards me. And then I just had fun. Then I forgot about the competition. It was great.
But a ride can be so much more than a record, which you've proven.
And that's exactly what happened. I trained like it was a competition, and then I can 110% say that I enjoyed my second time around the world so much more than the first time, because I remember this another ultra cyclist, Abdullah Zainab, was one of the videographers for the Australian bit for my last round the world. When I was about to do the 90-mile straight road, he was like, you don't know how often you're ever going to experience this, so you don't want to be in a shower when you're 50 and just be like, oh, I was wishing away time when I was riding on this really beautiful section of the road, or in this really beautiful part of the world. And it was quite funny because at the time I was like, oh, who thinks like that, you know? And I didn't think much about it. And then until I did Round the World a second time, I lived every single moment like that. I was like, who knows if this will ever happen to me? I had so many close calls. As a cyclist on a road, you just have so many close calls. You just accept your fate there.
Yeah, and so road cycling is dangerous.
Yeah, and it's funny because there was this point where in the middle of that thought, I got hit by a car. That was when I actually had to get stitches, and there was nowhere that I could get butterfly stitches or whatever. And so I had to put like super glue and...
You glued it yourself? Had you ever done it before? You just looked.
I've seen it on the internet. Also, I've done many first aid courses at this point in my life. So
I didn't know they taught you how to glue wounds in first aid courses.
No, they don't. Nobody teaches you that.
I was gonna say.
You learn it from weird channels on YouTube which teach
there
you
is
how
nothing
to
you can't do, V. There is nothing.
It was quite funny though. It stung, but I had some really nice coffee, and I was talking to some road workers at this other place, and they were waiting at the next roadhouse, and by the time I got there they had drinks ready and stuff, but because I had called in early and I was like, hey, I'm in a bit of trouble, and if I could, I wouldn't do the 65 kilometers more, but because I have to, can you please, book a room for me and put 2 veggie burgers with extra mustard sauce in the fridge for me. So they were waiting there for me when I got there. It felt so surreal that the same day that I got hit by a vehicle close to a shrine of someone else who died from getting hit by a vehicle, this had happened. It was so strange.
Because you believe so much in human kindness, you get it back. I really think that's a thing in the
I definitely think that.
Yeah.
Also, that's another thing, because I grew up hearing stories of human kindness, but I was surrounded by a lot of people not believing in people. The world is a harsh place and bad things can happen too many times, sort of thought process. And so when I got a choice to do anything by myself, the thing I believed in right from the start, and the thing that my dad always says is that people are way more good than bad. And so that's something that I was like, I want to see for myself now. And I've had so many proofs now that people are good. Imagine being in the middle of Mongolia, which you have been in a different context. I know that. I was there when you told us the story about it. And you're really sleepy and tired, struggling with the heat and the wind. And you feel like you're going to fall asleep on your bike. You're listening to an audiobook. And out of nowhere, a van is overtaking you. But there's a lady that gives you a can of kind of cold coffee. You don't expect that. You don't know amazing. That's going to happen.
No.
You are just there falling asleep on your bike or thinking you're going to fall asleep on my bike, and that just happens.
Not knowing it's coming must make it even better.
There was a day when I got given so many water bottles. Maybe 11 or 12 people just giving me water bottles and things like that. And just random things when I didn't expect. That's happened so many times that now I find it hard to believe almost that people do bad things to you intentionally.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe a positive thing. But then that's actually convinced me that if I ask people nicely enough, if I tell them my full situation, if I explain myself a little bit better, I can almost make anyone my friend.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I think there is definitely truth in that, and definitely my experience of the world, because I meet people when they're in quite a vulnerable context in my job. You can connect with anybody. As humans, there's always something we can connect on. And actually, even people who've made mistakes or made choices that they aren't proud of, you can basically always find good in them. I do totally agree with you, though. But I think that the way that it's inspired you to do so much and be so brave in your life is just amazing. That and everybody, basically, who goes on an adventure like you do comes back, and the main thing they have to say is, the world is a beautiful place and humans are beautiful.
Have you seen the thing, like, if you want to believe that the world is a bad place, watch the news. If you want to believe that the world is a good place, travel.
Turn the news off and get out there. Yeah.
Get out and see that place that you think is such a bad place.
Sorry about that, everybody. Puppy stepped on big dog. It's all good. No fights here. 100%. I definitely buy into that. If you stay inside, and sadly, the people in this world who are spreading hate and being so awful to each other are staying inside and being in their little echo chamber and looking at the news and stupid nonsense online.
Yeah. Also, if you want to believe in the bad, if you believe that the world is out to get you, I think the universe gives you proofs that the world is out to get you.
I agree. I definitely agree. So, after you finished riding around the world for the second time, after already doing a billion other incredible things, where did that leave you mentally and physically?
I think mentally it left me a little bit fulfilled, but then at the same time, a bit burnt out.
Yeah, which is fair, because to put some extra information, the effort you had to go to do that trip was so much more than, say, a Western white person, which is most of the people who do these kind of expeditions, because of your passport, as you slightly alluded to before, and because you had to do such a harder route, and you had so many extra complexities that, even if you had just had a smooth round the world, it would have felt fair enough to feel quite exhausted and stuff afterwards, but you had to do so much more.
Yeah, but then it's funny, it didn't feel unfair to have to do that. It felt like, now to put a challenge. This is fun. Okay, this is something new. This is a new way to do it, you know?
Well, great way to frame it.
That's what it was. It felt like a new way to do it. And maybe this is also a lesson from adventure, not feeling like you're hard done by. Because you do see that there's a whole part of the world that's way worse off, and having to think about purely survival, and this is you choosing to put yourself in that situation.
Of course, because exactly, you could sit and say, oh, well, the other people who've done this had it way easier, they could do easier routes, they could get visas more easily, but then just the fact you're doing this already puts you in the top 1%.
Literally, yeah. And I've seen so much proof of that everywhere, again, that it's hard not to think about it in a more positive way. Physically, around the world left me feeling stronger, because as I said, as I was coming to the end, in the last 1,500 odd kilometers, I felt so strong. I was not doing big distances. I was doing roughly 200k a day, right?
Not big distances.
No, as in, I wasn't doing ultra big.
Every person listening just went, you what? I know it's the context, but 200 kilometers a day is huge.
It was like this weird thing, and because then I was getting so much more rest, and I was drinking my body weight in coconut water. I just felt so much stronger as I came to the end of that journey. And when I came back to the UK, I was like, this is incredible. I actually feel good. This is great. And yeah, also I felt proud of myself, which I didn't.
You should have.
But I never did it before about my first round the world. I never got my celebration the first time. So this time, because I had the Whoop kind of going, good recovery, good strain, good sleep, because I was like, this is making me a stronger person, because I could see that helped me feel so much more prouder of myself in a weird way.
So what you're saying is having a good rest and a good recovery made you feel proud?
Exactly, honestly. Good rest and good recovery made sure that the next day was better and the one after that was better. And that, I would say good rest and psyllium husk made me feel proud of myself, because that psyllium husk made sure that food was actually staying in my body rather than actually just going out back to back. That was quite harsh. India was so hard. Finishing in your home country when you know that's the last thing you want to do. Riding in the heat, not riding in my home country. Riding in the heat. I'm not a heat person.
So tell me, where are you now, V? I know you've got lots of exciting plans for the future, but where are you now with balance, rest, movement?
Now I'm trying to rest more and have at least a little bit of an active part, because I'm going through this whole weird phase where I've lost a little bit of sense of self, and I don't feel very good right now. Finding that joy little by little. But I also know that with my goals this year, there's going to be a lot of varied training that I'm going to have to do. And with that in mind, I'm trying to find more mental balance than physical. I do think that I'm kind of obsessed with screens, being obsessed with tech, being obsessed with all of that. I'm trying not to let that get in the way of my mental health, and I'm trying to not let that destroy the safe space in my head that I'm trying to build for myself.
What do you do to look after your mental health?
I've been trying to get outside every day and stay active in one way or another every single day. Maybe not hectic active, but active enough, so that my brain is a safe space for myself. Also, I'm trying to make my outside time as also my non-tech time.
That's a good idea.
So if I'm going on a bike ride, and if it's meant to be my mental health bike ride, then my watch is not visible to me. Pretty much every single ride I've done in the last month has been without seeing the data. At the end of the day, after it's all done, it will get uploaded if it does, but I'm probably not making it public. But I'm not thinking about it. I'm not thinking about the data, and I'm trying to do more stuff like that right now, so that I can get my head out of that whole, if you achieve a certain kilometers per hour, then you're a good athlete versus bad. Being outside right now is more for helping my head be a safe space for myself than much else.
Yeah, so you can be mindful, but also so you don't start, I don't know, comparing yourself to metrics that aren't helpful.
Yeah, metrics and other people. So, so again, finding solo time has been so important for me in the last few weeks, I would say. Having a puppy in my life has not helped because looking after another creature as cute
Yes,
as
and the puppy
he
is very much trying right now to make as much noise as possible, and we're slowly trying to calm him down.
I know. He fell asleep for a bit. It was amazing. I was so impressed.
Yeah.
Now he's awake and very awake.
Yeah, metrics actually hasn't come up that much on this podcast, but I think is a really interesting thing. I personally don't use Strava, which is a common
no way.
like recording. I guess you would, people put, it's like a Facebook but for sports or something, isn't it? That's kind of, or like Instagram. But
and these days probably even like a dating app.
Yeah,
with like the messages feature and
probably.
stuff like that.
I used to use it. I have a profile. Sorry if you've ever tried to interact with me on it because I don't go on, but it massively messed with my mental health. It's really bad for me.
Were you trying to get every single QOM in Sheffield?
I mean, I've tried some things like that, but I also like I don't know, so stupid. Even though you can logic yourself out of it and say to yourself, I didn't ride today because I was working 12 hours, so there was no time to ride. I would go on at the end of a 12-hour shift and be like, look at all these people who ran and rode today. They're so much better humans than me. So stupid. What do you think? Do you have any problems with the comparison, or is it comparing with yourself that's the problem for you?
I have this thing when I look at someone's Strava data, I go straight to their heart rate.
Oh, really?
And,
so you're definitely getting in too deep.
Yes, but not in the way you would think. It's more like, how can I get my zone 2 to be that?
But just every single person is so different. You can't have the same zone 2 as somebody else.
I know. But I find it interesting because when I don't even look at the average heart rate. I'm looking at what was the max heart rate in this and then what was the elevation gain, because I know if I have any significant elevation gain on my rides, I know that I'm hitting like a higher end of my max heart rate. I know I'm hitting my zone 4 or 5.
But their max heart rate could be 150.
I know, but my logical brain sometimes doesn't know that. Well, didn't know that. I don't look at other people's Stravas anymore like that.
What else do you compare? Where else are the comparisons for you?
I think my comparisons are very much like, oh no, I'm not as strong as this other person at this point of time. Or actually even worse, when I know I used to be much stronger than I am at a certain point of time.
Yeah, so actually if you compare to yourself.
So much. And then, so sometimes I've had to stop myself in tracks from looking at my really old Strava stuff from the round the world time Strava. The other day I did a 50-something kilometer ride, and then instantly after I went and like look at some of my longest rides, and I looked at my average heart rate and I was like, hey, remember back then when you were so much fitter? And I was a bit like, well, that makes me feel a bit shit because today I felt good about the ride I did. And I had this weird mental thing in my head, and then I had to be like, let's get back in the real world now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you know this because we talked about it earlier, but you can't sustain that level all the time. And it's like we said, there's ups and downs and high phases and low phases, but it doesn't make it easier. You can want to logic yourself out of it as much as possible, but sometimes you still can't, and you still feel rubbish about it. Okay, we had a brief interruption from the postie and from the dogs, and now we're going to try, hopefully with Puppy's permission, to finish off our episode. But this is real life. You have to balance everything. Okay, so we were just talking about the phases of life, and that this is a phase where, yeah, maybe it is more restful, but that's okay. There's lots of exciting things coming in the future, and you have to be ready for them.
Absolutely. I think I'm currently in a phase where the bursts of energy, I have to make the most out of them, and anything outside of those has to be on the calmer side and on the more restful side. And as I said earlier, even the mental and emotional rest has been so important for me right now, because that's what's going to stop me from the comparison cycle when I'm, feeling worse off, if that makes sense. I'm also trying to not have a sense of urgency for a change, which is really hard because I'm the person who stays up all night to finish the thing because I think it's so urgent, even if in a large sense it's not. So, sense of urgency is a funny one that I'm trying to really calm that side of me down.
Yeah.
But I do love my late nights. and also, actually, an interesting part of that has been something as simple as choosing to read lighter-hearted, non-adventure, non-research, non-reference books, and more lighter stuff, like articles that aren't anything to do with self-improvement or adventure or being a better athlete or whatever.
That realization, I think, is so interesting and important, because I was actually going to ask you, how do you balance with the fact that your job, your hobby, your friendships and relationships are all, and like even the reading you do are all kind of intertwined. If I read about somebody going on an adventure, it has nothing to do with my work, so it's fine. It feels part of the fun part of my life. Yeah. But for you,
everything feels research for me. It's insane.
Yeah, it's all mixed into one. And even the fact that if you go for a bike ride, that I guess could be seen as part of your job.
I know, it's crazy actually. And I think the person that finds this harder than me is my partner. Because every time I'm doing something that's even remotely related to what I do for work, he doesn't know if that's a work thing or that's a me thing.
Yeah. There's hours of podcast material in your life, because I mean, your life...
There's so many phases of being...
Yeah, and also just you've lived so much more than your average 27-year-old, and there's so many stories out there. But I think the episode has to be ended somewhere, but maybe there can be another. And I really think we have covered some awesome stuff. And actually, the fact that you are at this kind of transition phase, I guess we could call it, and that you're reflecting a lot on this right now is super, super relevant, and maybe it'll be interesting to see how things change over the next kind of year. Thanks, dogs, for mildly behaving. And thank you so much, V, for being on the episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much to Vedangi for such a varied and interesting episode. She shows that whether you have cycled around the world twice or cycled around your village, many of the daily challenges we face are the same. She painted the world in such a beautiful light, and I hope you feel inspired to go out and experience that in whatever way you enjoy. You may have noticed the episodes coming out a bit more slowly. After some really useful feedback, the release schedule will be slowing down a bit, giving you a bit more time to get through these long, deep conversations, and me a bit more time to get them out there. Keep an eye on our Instagram @RestDaysCommunity or the website restdayscommunity.com for all the latest info. See you soon!